And let's see. So we have a couple. Charlotte Harbor, South Coast Early Learning Hub. I plan to visit family as often as I can. I have a niece and nephew, both under 1 year old, that I visit as often as I can. That is the best age. So yes, absolutely. Chris Coombs, I intend to continue to do my best in all things when possible. That's so wonderful. Thank you everyone for sharing. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to share your intentions and goals and things for the year. I think we will go ahead and get started, and we are going to start out with Gabby.
Thanks, Maria. And hi, everyone. Happy New Year. I hope you all had a good holiday and a good start to the new year so far, and were able to get some rest and spend time with family. But great to be back on a Tuesday. And I wanted to jump on here and actually share the family engagement session flyer that I sent out to everybody I think it was last week, but with the holidays, I'm going to resend it to everybody so you don't have to dig through your inbox. But just wanted to jump on and share my screen really quick and let you all know that we do have this ready. I have it available in a few different languages in Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, and Chinese. And our comms team is also working on creating some social media images for you all to share. So I'll get those out to you all. I'm hoping by tomorrow as well, just so that it can hopefully make it a little bit easier. So far, nobody has registered, and I do believe that it's likely because these were ready throughout the holiday. So please feel free to share amongst any family members. We're having one session on the 24th at 6 p.m. It'll be through Zoom, and that one's going to be led in English, and we'll have interpretation available. I believe when you register, it should indicate and let you select what language you family members would need. So as long as they select what language they prefer, we'll make sure to have someone there to translate. And then January 25th at 6 p.m., we're going to have a Spanish session, but I believe also an English translation, just in case folks have any conflicts. And wanted to see if folks had any questions. It is going to be a first come, first serve basis for the first 80 families, and 80 families being 40 one night, 40 another, just due to our own DELC staffing. And yeah, I wanted to see if folks had any questions.
There's a question in the chat box. It says, we were asked if the flyer is available in Arabic. Will the sessions be conducted in the 5 languages? And is
Yeah.
it 1 hour or 2 hour session?
Yeah, so they will be 1 hour sessions. And Begonia, I can get you an Arabic, or I could get everybody an Arabic flyer translated and make sure that a social media one is also translated in Arabic as well. So I can definitely get that out to folks. And also just wanted to share just a little bit of information on the stipends that we'll be providing families. There's a couple different options actually, and I know that typically the W-9s are a bit, of a hassle for families. So we have 3 different options. And Build is helping us actually with the reimbursement process. So it'll go through Build, not necessarily DELC, where they'll have an option of either submitting their W-9 if family members want a check mailed to them, and then Build will issue the check to folks. Or we have a $50 Visa gift card option available where we can either mail it or email it to folks. It's really whatever family members prefer. Build also said that if there's, like a couple of you who kind of coordinate and have a few family members, register. Also happy to send it to you all, especially if it's a check, if that's preferable. That way we don't have to collect W-9s from folks. So happy to kind of talk about that as well, or really just see if folks have any questions around these flyers.
There's a comment in the chat that says that's too much work for $50 and some people will not be comfortable submitting a W-9.
I agree with the whole W-9 portion. So what Karina and I are planning to do is just when we have folks at the family engagement session and all the registrants confirmed, is really just ask them to give us either an email address or an email, and we can submit or send them the $50 Visa gift card, whichever method they prefer, whether it's via email or in the mail.
Any other questions or comments for Gabby and this listening session? Feel free to come off mute or drop it in the chat.
Yeah, or feel free to email me and Karina directly if you guys have any other questions that come up later today or throughout the week.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. With that, we will move to Nancy Houth from ODE, who has a presentation for us. Nancy, I believe you can share if that works for you, or I
Okay,
did send it to
great.
me. I can share on your behalf, whatever
I
works.
can just go ahead and share my screen. Oh, it says I can't. So let me just send it to you.
I have it. Let me
Hold
see.
on just a second. Do you have it?
I believe I do.
I think I sent it.
Mhm. Mm.
Well, while Maria's getting that ready, I can introduce myself and first really just thank you all for inviting Mindy and I to give you an update on where we are with Jumpstart Kindergarten. My name is Nancy Howd, and I'm the Jumpstart Kindergarten grant manager and with ODE. Mindy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Mindy Helmandoller Armitage. I'm the pre-K through third grade coordinator at ODE, and it's so nice to be here.
Perfect. Still trying to pull it up. It's going a little slow.
Oh,
Here it goes.
everything's a little slow today, I think.
Yes. Can we see this?
Yes.
Hopefully. Okay, let's.
You can just go straight to slide 2, Maria. So we're really excited to be able to give you some updates, and we have 2 connection points with early learning hubs that we wanted to provide some context for and give you some updates about Jumpstart. So I'll just go ahead and get started with the second slide, the one right before that.
Right here?
Yes, that's great. I think most of you know this. I've been able to meet with you all before, but for those of you who don't know, Jumpstart Kindergarten is really a bridge program designed to support a strong start to school for children and caregivers. Focal students receive priority enrollment, and the program is really different county by county, district by district, even school by school. But the thing they have in common, if they're receiving Jumpstart Kindergarten funds, are a minimum of 30 hours in the classroom with really just joyous hands-on learning, a minimum of 10 hours of culturally responsive family engagement activities. This can happen before, during, after Jumpstart. And then planning and outreach with early learning providers like hubs. This is a key piece of the program. If districts are telling me that they're not working with their early learning partners, I always respond and say, then you're working too hard. It's so helpful to connect and align with your hubs and early learning partners. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Maria. So just briefly, Jumpstart is funded by COVID, American Rescue Plan funds called ESSER 3. We have 11.2 million for 3 years of Jumpstart funding. The highest needs district received the award. We started slow with just 17 districts, and now we've ramped up to 28 for this coming summer, 2024. And our funding ends at the end of September. So you can look and see if you have districts that are participating in Jumpstart, and we also have a link to a map that you can look at when we drop the link for the slides. So the goals are, they're big. One of the main goals is to have strong early learning and district partnerships to focus on family engagement and relationship building. This is really a family engagement strategy. Elevating kindergarten as a critical year in the lives of families, and recognizing parents and caregivers as the child's first teacher. And then a key piece that I'm really excited about right now is continuous learning through data. And speaking of data, one of our best data points to measure the success of the program is regular attendance. You know, students, I'm sure you are all aware that students are regular attenders when they attend school 90% of the time, or missing fewer than 10 days over the school year. And so you can see on the left, this chart shows attendance rates have really been declining, regular attendance rates. You know, in 2017-18 school year, we had about 80% of our kinders attending regularly. Now, from last year, we only have 55% regularly attending. So this is an all-time low and kind of a crisis moment for attendance for kindergartners. So we were really interested to see what attendance looks like for those kinders that participated in Jumpstart compared with those who didn't. And for the first summer, 2022, with that sort of smaller cohort of 17, 18 districts, we saw that for all the kinders, about 53% of the Jumpstart Kindergarten districts were regular attenders. But with Jumpstart Kindergarten students only, that was 7 percentage points higher at 60.5. We thought that was really interesting and promising. We can't claim anything causal because, you know, families are self-selecting in and all of that reasoning, but we thought it was really interesting. And if you could go to the next slide, we found that when we drilled down, that those higher attendance rates for Jumpstart Kindergarten student continued by race, ethnicity. And then Maria, could you go to the next slide? As well as for our special groups, like special education, that was a big bump, migrant ed, students in foster care. Of course, some of these numbers are really small, so we're really interested in just continuing to learn more about these early data results. One of the key reasons we asked Maria if we could just pop in, is to share a little bit more about our spring registration campaign. Last year, we had a small campaign with Jumpstart grantees only, promoting early registration for kindergarten families. This year, we're having a statewide spring registration campaign, and we're going to start that April 2nd. So the whole idea is that all of the folks who have their arms around our pre-K students are going to just share this simple message, register for kindergarten today, in the hopes that families who may not already be in, you know, public pre-K or childcare will hear about it and go, oh, I shouldn't wait until the first day of kindergarten or the last day in August or whatever. But it's important to register early. We have a variety of banners and yard signs and even stickers for children. And we just made a one-pager that we're getting translated for all the navigators to understand kind of the why behind the importance of registering early. We have a social media kit coming, and we're just hoping that Early Learning Hubs can help us elevate this. I know many of you are already doing this work. So anything that we have that's supplemental will be wonderful. So please keep in touch. We'll be sharing emails about this as we get closer to that launch date. Mindy?
And then I also shared the link to the spring registration materials that will be updated once the April 2nd hits, also probably in about a month. So they're available on there as well. And when you get the slides, you can link it there too. For the next thing, there's a partnership meeting on March 5th. Some of you may be familiar with this. It's just the purpose of this is to make sure that districts and early learning partners can come together and collaborate to create that inclusive and culturally responsive Jumpstart Kindergarten program, however that looks in your area. So there is a hub for those hubs that we do serve in the Jumpstart Kindergarten program. There's a link to a contact form, and we just want to make sure that the right people are invited and they're all at the table together. So if you don't mind making sure that your information for your hub is correct on that, that would be extremely helpful to us. So we make sure that those invites get sent. And then it's about an hour and a half meeting where we facilitate and we have note takers and we help provide that structure for you to come together with your districts and other early learning partners, and to help you kind of facilitate and guide you through that planning process. And I was trying to think, Nancy, is there anything else I have missed on that?
No, I think if you had attended last year, you might have noticed that some districts were not able to attend. And so we're working on that so that, all districts, all Jumpstart districts will be represented. And, we hope to have really robust breakout groups by region. And we do organize this by hub. So in some cases, there'll be one hub. I'm thinking of like Molly Day and Francis at Elm. There would be like 4 or 5 districts and all the other early learning partners. So it might be a large group.
Great, thank you. You can go to the next slide.
And Shira, I see that you're asking if you've received an invite for this. We are going to be sending that out this afternoon. So we wanted to make sure we had all the correct names. And then we'll be sending that invite out to you either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. We wanted to also share these resources, the Jumpstart Kindergarten webpage, the Jumpstart Kindergarten Toolkit, and a brief with more data about attendance. And I think that's it. I think we're right within our time period. Maria, do we have time for any questions or comments?
We do have time. We can take a look at the chat. Let's see. If it's wrong, Abby's asking if it's wrong, do we just edit or strike through? That works. They can just edit the form. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
they should have edit access.
We just said it directly. Yep, Mindy responded. Okay, I think that's it. Any other questions that are coming up in regards to this? Are there plans to continue the program after 2024?
Oh, that's such a great question, Charlotte. Not through the funding that we have. I think we're all looking for ways to sustain the program with other funding. But we're kind of right in the middle of that discussion. I think there's some hope that perhaps districts can use some of the early literacy funds. So we're excited about the possibilities, and I'll say I'm also like biting my nails on a regular basis.
I just got a message that it looks like it is the same day as our hub director meeting on March 5th. What time did you guys have your?
It's 3 to 4:30.
Okay, so it is after our meeting. Okay, perfect.
Well, that's going to be a long day for you all.
It
I'm
is.
sorry about that.
Okay, is ODE asking partners if they will sustain programs through the ODE literacy funds?
And Mindy, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, we're actually working through that process right now. And so there's certain qualifications that are written into the legislative portion. And so we're working through the language right now to see, but absolutely we're looking into that. So thank you for raising that question. Once I have a better answer for you, I'll definitely make sure and pass that along. Charlotte, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's more of a comment in that I know that we don't have any districts in our region that are participating as far as I know. But there are a lot of other districts that either use their own funding or apply for hub funding through KPI funds to support similar kindergarten transition programs. And having the Jumpstart resources available for statewide has been really helpful, and we continue to direct districts to the resources that are available. And I think having that kind of statewide structure is super beneficial regardless of where the funding is coming from for these programs.
Sure, that's great to hear. And that's one of our goals is, we provide a lot of PD and technical assistance to our grantees, but we hope a lot of our supports and resources can be used statewide. And that was the reason for the Jumpstart Kindergarten Toolkit.
Which is currently being updated to kind of reflect some of the changes over the past year. So that's also a good thing also on that website when you visit it.
And I will be sending the recap email with the slides and the links. Everything will be in there. Any other questions for Nancy or Mindy? All right. Well, thank you both for sharing, Nancy and Mindy. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for making time for us. I know you've got a packed agenda. This was really fun to see everyone.
Of course. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Mindy. All right. I think we will move right ahead to Lauren Sigmund, who is going to be presenting for us. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren Sigmund. I'm a preschool specialist at the Department of Early Learning and Care. In a past life, I was a governing board member for Early Learning Hub in our local region. So, hi, Christy, I see you. I'm here to talk about McKinney-Vento. My colleague Rachel Elliott is on the phone. She's traveling between meetings currently. So if we really need her, she's there, but I want to introduce her as well. She's our Head Start Collaboration Director for DELC. So she works in helping support Head Start programs and connection to DELC around policy and work. And Rachel, if I said that wrong, please correct me. A lot of my work focuses on making connections between DELC and ODE around kindergarten transition, as well as helping support school district programs that are receiving funding from DELC to provide early learning services. So for Rachel and I, making those connections to ODE programs of where there is cross interest with early learning is a lot of what we do. And one of those programs that we're going to talk to you about today is McKinney-Vento. So real high overview, if it's the first time you're hearing of it, McKinney-Vento Act is passed to support children and families experiencing houselessness. We'll put a link here in the chat to ODE's website. So providing resources to help reduce barriers for children and families experiencing houselessness to attend school, to remain in school, and to receive services and support to help them do so. And school districts are each tasked with identifying a McKinney-Vento liaison to help support that work within their district, and helping identify and provide that support to all children 0 all the way up through grade 12. So that's where making connections with early learning becomes really important with districts in helping them navigate and understand the early learning landscape to understand what resources are available for those children 0 to 5 through early learning and help get them connected. So I believe Maria sent you all the resource that was put together, but I can share my screen as well. And then to kick things off, Maria, are we able to do the poll, do you think? Or
Yes, we absolutely.
awesome. So it's kind of an information gathering for us, for DELC in our partnership with Oregon Department of Education. We shared similar information with their McKinney-Vento liaisons, and we're working to understand better what the connection points are with early learning partners. So we wanted to ask a few poll questions to get some more information about kind of across the state, what your understanding is and connections already are, and maybe some examples of where those are happening so that we can help look into those as examples, as well as where some gaps are to help us learn more about what we can do to help support making those connections. So we've got a few quick poll questions. I think Maria's gonna pop up around your all's understanding understanding and knowledge and connections already around McKinney-Vento. Well, pause. Thank you. Oh. Flash poll. Oh, it's okay. I've got the questions too, Maria. If it's easier, I can just pose them and we can do chat answers. Oh, you're on mute. I don't know if you're.
Sorry, everyone. Yeah, they're not, the poll function is just not wanting to work for me today.
Okay.
Yes.
So I will post them in the chat. And there are narrative answers, but feel free to just do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If that makes sense. You'll know when you see the question. To kind of indicate where you're at with your answers. Let me put this one in. So the first one is just how familiar you are with McKinney-Vento Act, the homeless education program, and what the eligibility are for families to qualify for those services. And this might be nice too, because then we can kind of see around the state. So you can either type your answer or just if you assign like a numerical value, 1 being strongly agree and 5 being strongly disagree. And you can take back the data. Okay, thank you all. So it looks like a lot of agrees for the most part. Everyone's pretty aware of McKinney-Vento. Awesome. 1 more minute. I see a few coming in still. Okay, and then I will post our second question. There's only 3 questions, so take a little bit of time. Okay, the second question is, I am familiar with the support and resources that are offered to families who qualify through the McKinney-Vento Act, and how much that applies to you. Awesome. So it looks like some of you made connections already, and maybe a little bit less familiarity about the actual programs and resources. Thanks for taking the time. We'll do our last question. I know who to contact at the school district regarding families who I think may qualify for McKinney-Vento. So some range of familiarity in those connection points. Yeah, and it's varies district to district, and sometimes there's turnover in those as well. All right, awesome. Thank you all so much for taking the time to just give us that information. It's really helpful when we're thinking about what resources are needed and if the resources that are out there are useful, as well as the connection points to help support the work. See, we have a long answer. Yes. Great point. Yeah, I'll get into that in a second around preschool promise. So Rachel and I, and actually Nancy, who I don't know if she's still on or not, worked together with the McKinney-Vento coordinators from ODE to create a one-pager resource that really pulls together the information and contact points for both early learning and for the school district side. And so I'll put that link in the chat as well. And I was just going to walk through what is all on there. Our hope is that this is a resource for staff that are helping connect and support these families more so than the families themselves, as kind of a resource guide. So I think I can share my screen, and that way I can walk you through directly what I'm looking at. Is that working for everybody to see?
I can see it, yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And this is posted on ODE's website at the link I showed you, and it has been translated into I think the 7 main languages throughout Oregon. So I'll show you where that's at as well. But it just gives a brief overview about McKinney-Vento and what it offers. On the first page here, you'll see some resources for DELC. In discussion with the McKinney-Vento coordinators, we were talking about what would make the most sense for helping connect school districts through early learning programs. And so you all as hubs, being those community coordinators, we think are really key and vital roles, so that if McKinney-Vento liaisons have a question about if a family qualifies for Preschool Promise or Baby Promise or ERDC or any of the many programs that we have to offer, we wanted to give them a single connection point for understanding what those early learning programs are. So the hub link is there, as well as childcare resource and referral. Like vice versa, when there's so many districts, there's so many types of early learning programs, that helps having that key person to be able to connect with, or agency at least to connect with, to find those answers. And then some additional resources, more so around eligibility requirements and how to do that support. The Head Start website has several great resources. Some are videos, some are articles about how to support children experiencing houselessness. So those are listed here as well. And then on the second page here, you'll find links for the Oregon Department of Ed resources. One that we hope is very helpful is there's a live link to all the school district McKinney-Vento liaisons. So if you're not quite sure who that is, or if it's changed, that list is updated constantly by the districts themselves when new people enter those roles. So if you're looking to connect at a specific district in your region, you can go to that link and find your McKinney-Vento liaison if you have a question, or if you have a family to refer. Oftentimes at school districts, more and more they're starting to bring in families and talk about younger children. But if that child that you're serving, or a program is serving, doesn't have older siblings that are entering kindergarten yet, they're sometimes not linked to their McKinney-Vento as a resource. So that kind of two-way communication is super important in getting families connected early and to programs that they qualify for. There's also a few links for the Department of Human Services around how to help support families experiencing houselessness. And then you'll see here's some of the information Nancy shared around how to get connected, what some summer resources could be, just a few frequently asked questions about what connections can be made or where to go for questions. So again, we wanted this to be just a reference sheet of sorts for those professionals with families to help make those connections, either from the early learning side or from the K-12 side, to understand kind of the landscape at a broad level, so they at least know who to call to ask the question around McKinney-Vento. And I'll show you, because it's buried a little bit on the ODE website, and I'm not sure which screen I'm sharing, so let me stop real fast and make sure it's the right one. Oh, it was the right one. Okay, so I didn't scroll down on the other one, so you didn't see half of it. Okay. On ODE's website, under resources here, if you click on the Oregon Centered Resources, down here is the English version that I showed, as well as the translated versions as well of that one pager. So if you're looking for it, I'll put this link in the chat, but the link itself isn't super helpful unless you know where to go on the tabs. But I'll scroll down because you missed it before, but here's the other parts I was referring to. Okay, I'm gonna pause there and see. I see a few questions. Maria, do you want to help me go through those, or if anybody has questions that they haven't entered yet that they want to share?
Let's see, Begonia wrote, okay, I think we talked on this, but I will just read it out loud for everyone's clarity. Doug clarified in an email that the letter that indicates that a family met the definition of homeless backed on McKinney-Vento Act cannot be considered as proof of income for the enrollment in PSP. Therefore, hubs will need to require proofs of income for families in the McKinney-Vento program who wish to apply to PSP. They could provide the self-declaration form as a proof of income, but it would be great if SD liaisons could email us to confirm eligibility, and that could be sufficient.
Yes, Begonia, are you hoping for on the DELC side that email would count, or that connection could be made with-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you for that recommendation. I can take that to Dana and our team at PSP as a point, because sometimes those little tiny, like hiccups aren't on our radar broadly, but can cause some either real quick efficient enrollment or some barriers that delay things without intention. So thank you for bringing that up.
Perfect. And then we have another comment. A lot of families could qualify under doubled up with other people due to loss of housing or economic hardship, but it is a stigma, or they do not see themselves as a family experiencing a housing insecurity.
Yeah, it's a great point too. I think doubled up is one of those areas where families aren't self-identifying as much, and so it takes some more relationship building and questions from either the liaison or the early learning service provider to kind of learn about and let them know that those resources are available if they're not self-identifying that way. I know that in communities that experience the wildfires, we saw this happening a lot more too, where families were doubling up for temporary and so became eligible through McKinney-Vento for those reasons. And some, generational families still qualify doubling up if the housing that they're living in is not intended to house that many people. So all of those are great questions. If you have a question about that, that's a great point to take to your McKinney-Vento liaison. Just say, hey, I have this family and this is the situation. Would they qualify? And they can definitely help walk you through if they would or not. Any other questions? And looking at the answers to those poll questions, it seems like many of you are familiar and working closely with your McKinney-Vento liaisons already. If any of you have resources or systems that you're currently using to share information back and forth around McKinney-Vento, or have created kind of a system for that communication, or any resources that you'd be willing to share, you can pass those along to Maria or to me. We would love to see them as templates that we can share with school districts and others to think about how to start to build those systems or communication programs, processes, where they may be not yet in place or where new people come in, so that we can help inform some solid practices around that two-way communication of referral. Either way, no matter where the family enters our educational system, hopefully early and getting connected right from the start. So love to see any examples of that, or I don't know if anybody wants to be on the spot and share right now, but happy to hear where that's going well for you all. Okay, we'll leave it open. If those come to mind later, or you're digging for that file, feel free to send it to Maria or to me, so that we'll be happy to use it as for a sharing tool and pass that information along. That was all I have around McKinney-Vento. So the link, I believe, is in the chat for those resources. It's posted to ODE website. Happy to answer any follow-up questions anyone has as you're thinking more on that. I wanted to check in, kind of switching gears drastically here, shift topics. I believe Maria sent out to you all also a survey around community engagement sessions that ODE and DELC are hosting with Oregon's Kitchen Table around the new early learning transition check-in. And so we're hoping to get some feedback from you all about in community what the best way to go about hosting those feedback sessions are around that, the new redesign of Oregon's kindergarten assessment. And understand a little bit more about what the needs and logistics are in your regions for doing so. So if you haven't had the opportunity to get that survey completed, I would love to have that back. Thanks, Maria, for sharing that. And then thank you to all of those of you who answered, provided really good feedback, helped us kind of form our questions so they made more sense. So we appreciate all the feedback from that. And we'll be starting to plan those regional sessions around the state here in the spring, but you'll see invites coming within the next month or two. Funding available. That's a great question. I know there was funding available for feedback sessions for families that participated in the implementation side of those family conversations. So I can check and see if there will be for the partners as well. Okay, so I've got a couple questions to take back. Thank you for that. That's all for me, Maria. I don't have anything else.
Perfect. Any other questions around the sessions for Lauren or feedback that you guys have gotten? Anything that's coming up? No. Perfect. So I know Alyssa will be joining us to share a little bit about the Birth to 5 literacy at 2 o'clock, but I just want to give the opportunity to share just a quick few updates from us and minor reminders. I know I sent out an email about Raise Up Oregon booklets. I think most of you had the opportunity to respond, but if you haven't, there is still time if any of you need Raise Up Oregon booklets. Gabby is working on helping fulfill that for us. So I'm happy to send it back out, but you can just respond to me, send me a quick email and let me know how many copies you would like. And Gabby will get those going for you all. Okay. Mailing lots tomorrow. Yes, I know a lot of ESDs were on break, so we were holding off, making sure that they would get somewhere and not just be out, waiting in the snow, rain, etc. So please, if you need any booklets, feel free to reach out to me. And second thing is just a quick plug for our KPI peer learning that's going to be coming up in March. Please let me know if we need to add anyone to that invite. I think you are able to forward it as well, but it is going to be starting on March 6th, and it will be the first Wednesday of the odd numbered months. And thank you to Charlotte Carver, who is going to be leading that first session for us. And we're really hoping to be able to get that going and continue with that. And the last little update that I have is that we are going to be hiring soon. So we are really excited to be able to share that. We are going to be looking for some help for the interview panel, and we'll be reaching back out to see who is interested in helping with that. And as soon as we have the official posting, I will share it with all of you for whoever's interested in applying or sharing within your networks. I cannot wait to be able to have someone join and join me in the space. So yes, and thank you to everyone. So hopefully it'll be here soon, but as soon as it's officially updated, then we will share it with all of you. And let me see if there is something in the chat. Oh, that's just it. Well, I don't, let me think if I have any other updates. I don't have it. Oh, go ahead, Gabby.
Hey Maria, I was actually just going to see if I could actually just ask everyone since all the hub directors are here. I think, well, I sent out a hub ELC Delta build kickoff meeting for January 30th, but I think there might have been something wrong with the invite. So wanted to just jump on and quickly ask if folks actually have that invite. Some folks reached out and said that they somehow got a cancellation, and that's definitely not the case. It's still happening. So I just want to know if it's likely something with my Outlook if I have to recreate the invite, or if folks don't have it, let me know, because I think my Outlook is just being a little bit glitchy on that. Perfect. Yep. It's January 30th, 12 to 2. Okay. Abby, I have been having to actually remove and then re-add people, so I will go ahead and get you re-added. Perfect. Jen, I'll follow up with you separately. I'll let Carrie from Build know that you have a conflict and see if there's any other way that we can get you to participate in that kickoff meeting.
Great, thanks, Gabby.
Yes, I will resend the invite. Awesome. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure it might have just been my Outlook, so thank you. Really appreciate folks checking for me really quick.
Perfect. I don't have anything else to share for the moment, so why don't we just take a quick break, refill water, grab a snack, and Alyssa should be joining us right at 2. So we can just take a quick break until 2 o'clock, and then we'll hop right back on and get a quick update from Alyssa. Thank you, everyone.
Are you gonna stop recording, Maria?
All right, it looks like Hi, Alyssa. Welcome. I think some people are still trickling back from our break. So we'll give just a few minutes for everyone to join back.
Great.
Perfect. I think I see people coming back. Wonderful. Okay. I think with that, I will hand it over to Alyssa.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Pooja's joining me as well from the governor's office. And Pooja, jump in as you'd like. I put together a couple of slides just because I know it's the afternoon after a holiday weekend. And so sometimes it's helpful to have something to anchor to. But wanted to give you all an update on the birth through 5 literacy plan. And I see that the fonts are not loading well, so I'm going to keep it in this version so that it's not gibberish. But we had to submit a plan for the birth through 5 literacy fund as a condition of House Bill 3198. And so we just submitted this report at the end of the year. It's posted on our website, and I'll make sure Maria has a link so you all can take a look at it. But this budget note required us to expand culturally specific early literacy programs, provide training and coaching for direct service staff in early literacy, and develop and expand language revitalization efforts by federally recognized Indian tribes in Oregon. We had to put together the plan and funding recommendations by the end of this year. This did conflict with the legislation itself, which actually gave us until December of next year to submit our plan. But we needed to put this together in order to request the $9.4 million in funding so that we can start administering this program. So I wanted to just quickly walk through how we did that and what our recommendations were. Since we were on this compressed timeline with the budget note, we decided to leverage some of the engagement we've done over the last couple of years, both in preparation for launching DELC, like our mission, vision, and values work, but also looking at the PDG surveys we've completed and the different evaluations and engagements we've done just through our work as DELC. And there were 3 themes that really emerged. The first was a key strategy is to provide culturally relevant, flexible, and responsive services. There was a quote stating that we should not be providing solutions to community without the input of community. The 2 sort of emerging themes related to that had to do with the quality of care and the quality of education. So recognizing that some parents are concerned about the quality of the early learning programs their children are in and the quality of the environment they're experiencing, as well as what their children are learning while in care. And as we think about early literacy specifically, recognizing that there may not be a strong early literacy component to the early childhood education programming. So we wanted to continue to leverage existing program infrastructure so that we could get these dollars into community quickly while meeting the goals and intentions of the legislation. So there are 2 ways that we are proposing we do this. The first is to take 4.7 million, so half of that funding, to leverage the Kindergarten Partnership and Innovation Fund through hubs. This would be a slightly narrowed scope of allowable uses. So this would be one-time funding for the next program year to focus on the establishment or expansion of parent engagement activities. So this could include book distributions and other materials related to early literacy development. It could be the establishment or expansion of projects like Little Free Libraries, or establishment or expansion of regional partnerships with organizations to increase access to books. So these are some of the kind of direct service recommendations, in addition to the ongoing professional learning development that we know a lot of KPI work already funds. The other part of this funding would be by establishing a birth through 5 literacy program that actually builds on the Early Childhood Equity Fund. So one of the strengths of the Early Childhood Equity Fund are who is eligible to be a grantee and the types of services that they're able to offer, and the fact they're able to leverage the PSU evaluation to really underscore the importance of culturally specific and culturally responsive early learning practices, and in this case, early literacy practices. So our recommendation is that we take the current eligibility requirements for Equity Fund and use that for the program. So if a program is already an Equity Fund grantee, they would be able to build off of their current services by developing or delivering additional early literacy resources and materials through the parenting education and parent-child interaction activities that they currently offer. They could develop or deliver culturally relevant early literacy training and professional development activities, recognizing this would be a new activity for grantees. And they can also conduct community engagement activities to help identify additional community-specific gaps specific to early literacy that would inform our 2024 Birth Through 5 literacy plan that's due at the end of this year. For applicants that meet the Equity Fund eligibility criteria but aren't currently Equity Fund grantees, they would also be able to develop or deliver culturally relevant training, so focused on the workforce, and focus on community engagement activities to inform the plan. So a slightly narrower scope, since they wouldn't currently be in the process of being evaluated as an Equity Fund grantee, but recognizing that we can build off of the eligibility criteria to have a strong applicant pool and provide culturally relevant services in community. There are a couple of steps to go still. So we had to submit the plan by the end of the year, and we are now preparing to go before the interim Joint Ways and Means Subcommittee on Education next week, to present on the plan and request approval. During the short session, the legislature will be able to take action and ideally release the funding to us. We are also in the process of hiring 2 early literacy specialists that will lead the community engagement of this plan, as well as start working with community partners on the professional learning supports and ongoing implementation of a Birth Through 5 literacy program, as well as conduct the required administrative rulemaking and RFA development associated with these dollars. Our goal, assuming that these dollars are approved by the legislature, is to release an RFA for new and existing Equity Fund grantees, specifically for the Birth Through 5 literacy program. We would also simultaneously work on amending HUB grant agreements to include the KPI increases and allowable uses. We would aim to select and award the new grantees for the Birth Through 5 literacy program in the spring and share those previously identified goals and themes for feedback as we do community engagement throughout the spring and into the early summer. This would be targeted community engagement focused on families from communities that have been historically underserved and working with the tribal nations as well. We will use this input to also begin updating the early learning and kindergarten guidelines that we had developed with ODE back in 2015 and 2016, and adopt permanent administrative rules as needed. Our goal is to have completed an analysis and identify additional opportunities for expansion of this program based on the community engagement and data that is reported from you all as hubs and from Equity Fund Birth Through 5 grantees. And then the plan is that we would submit the 2024 plan, identifying any additional gaps and recommendations for additional investment in the program. So I will stop there. Happy to answer questions. And Pooja, please feel free to add anything I missed.
Thanks, Alyssa. That's a lot of information, so just maybe people can process it. I can provide kind of high level, like how did we get here from many of us have talked about since session. Would that be helpful, or do you want to dive into some of the details of what Alyssa shared?
I think
it's always helpful. Yeah, I think context is would be great. And it might have been in this slide, Alyssa, but I think in previous conversations that we have had, it looks to me like the early literacy funds through KPI is going to be a time limited, just this biennium, right? And
Yep.
so I think in terms of the context too, like what are we building towards? And how do we help make sure that we can have some continuity past this sort of one-time funding?
Yeah. Alyssa, is it okay if I start?
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to back way up in January when, the governor's kind of working with a lot of partners, including many of you all around this early literacy success initiative. It was really important for her that this early literacy is not just a K-5 or just a school system kind of endeavor and an investment. It was really important to her to make sure that we're heeding the decades of brain science that tells us that when young babies' brains are developing in that first 5 years of life, before they even enter into our school system, that it's really important to make investments urgently, given the ways that we can just do better as a state around early literacy outcomes that show up in third grade test scores, but obviously can manifest so much sooner. So the Early Literacy Success Initiative that was passed through House Bill 3198 included a school grant component, and the legislature decided to allow those dollars to flow without any barriers through the Oregon Department of Education. And so that application process is open, and it was a 2-year investment. What the legislature decided to do on the other two components, which was the birth through 5 component and a community grant to be administered through ODE, the legislature put a requirement for a budget note report so that ODE and DELC had to come back to the legislature essentially with more information by the end of December that just passed. On how they would spend this $10 million about for ODE and $10 million for DELC on the birth through 5 plan. So essentially, the legislature chose to not have those resources from DELC and through the birth through 5 administered for the full biennium because they chose to say, we want you all to report back. They put a barrier, and you might remember a lot of conversation near the end of session where we were flagging this transparently so that you all could track into it as well. It was a chaotic session, as you might recall, for many reasons. And that's what the legislature chose to do. From the governor's perspective, it was a miss because we can't both say that we care about science and evidence and ignore the fact that brains are most quickly developing in those first 5 years. And we can't ignore the evidence that tells us we have the literacy outcomes we do in 3rd grade. And we know that parents and families are really the best, most important teacher in a child's life. So there was no convincing of the governor on the importance of this, but it was a bummer that this was another barrier that was put in place for more information to be provided. And the intention all along was that the first biennium vision was about investing where we have the most infrastructure around early literacy ready to go. That's why the KPI and the early literacy equity, the early childhood equity fund were kind of thought of as like, for the first biennium, let's invest here where we have existing infrastructure, while DELC does this longer term birth through 5 plan that is due by December of next year. And that longer term plan is really intended to say, where are all the programs within DELC that have touch points to early literacy? And how do we strengthen all of that in a way that's still culturally and linguistically responsive to families, so that in 2025 and beyond, we have more sustainable ongoing funding throughout more programs that are really supporting child and families' whole needs around early literacy, but touch points to some of those other services that we know are really pivotal for families too. So with the barrier of the budget note, the reason that this pivot was made is like, this is a plan to get some dollars in the early learning community in the short term, but because of the budget note situation, And some of the conversations with the budget analysts on the legislature side, the only way to do this was through one-time funds for this current biennium. And that longer term plan that Delk would be developing by December of next year with input from many of all of you would help to guide longer term ongoing investments. So I'll just stop there and see if there's other questions.
Thank you. That's super helpful, and I think really encapsulates the messiness that was the session, particularly with this bill from last year. So really appreciate that. And as we think about this sort of moving forward and planning for this year with these funds, you know, like what's the vision for moving forward in terms of what we're building now, hopefully will lead into what we are continuing to fund later, right? So, you know, I think that will be helpful for all of us as we're engaging with our communities to explore and leverage what's already happening, but then also with an eye towards, wow, if we could really do this right, this is what it would look like, and thinking about where should those funds flow through as well. Because this year is going to be really important that we do this really well and really right, so that it's not just gets sort of looked upon as being, well, it wasn't expended correctly, or the communities didn't really know about it effectively, and it was just sort of, you know, virtually 10 million with not a lot to show for it. Like I want to make sure that we can really do it justice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Melissa might better be able to kind of respond to the question around sustainability, but I think there's definitely recognition from our part that like one-time resources are not as good as ongoing, you know, resources. So unfortunately, this is the situation that we're in. But I think the idea is that big P plan, the Birth Through 5 plan that will be done by end of next year. The idea is whatever you're doing already around early literacy touch points that you already know are successes would be good things to invest in for 2024. And then we would expect to see those types of things being uplifted in that plan that is due next year to say, here are recommendations on where we should invest sustainably going forward. Alyssa, what else would you add?
No, I think that's all right. We are working on, and in the plan you'll see kind of some proposed metrics to kind of get at that point, Lisa, of what are some fairly tangible things, knowing that you don't really see the return on this for years. What are some fairly tangible things that are easily measured, like the number of professional learning sessions you did at Focus on Literacy, the number of books you handed out, that we know aren't the long-term indicators, but demonstrate community involvement and community benefit, so that we can make the case that these dollars were able to be expended quickly, that they were used well, that they did reach community and impacted community, knowing that it's gonna, the bigger story takes more time. I think too, the challenge of this and the way it rolled out, as Pooja outlined, in how we've ended up in this kind of one-time structure. So the dollars themselves are ongoing, but because we have not been able to do the deep community engagement work that's expected by this legislation, we anticipate seeing recommendations for more types of investments and additional gaps in addition to the 3 that I mentioned in the presentation, and that could lead to recommendations that maybe KPI does see a continued investment. Maybe it's 3 million, not 4.7. So recognizing that we need community to have a voice in driving how the total 9.4 million is allocated long term. It doesn't mean that KPI may not continue to see a share of that going forward. And the hope would be that as those recommendations go forward, what's recommended there becomes the permanent plan for financing. Also hoping that we see more than just 9.4 million invested every biennium, and really start to see the recognition that what happens before K-12 matters. And so giving 9.4 million at birth through 5 and, 120 million to K-12, like may not be the right balance.
There is a question in the chat. Is the K-12 90 million ongoing funding or only for this biennium?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it was so chaotic near the end of session. The 90 million is ongoing. And so the difference in large part is because this barrier of the budget note. I don't know if the ODE community grant, that's actually a thing that I need to run down, whether that's also one time. The ODE community grant that the legislature also chose to hold off on with the same budget note, that isn't associated with any longer term planning. So I don't know how that influences whether it's ongoing. So that's just the only other complicating factor. And related to the retroactivity of it, Begonia, what do you mean by like if KPI,
if new funding is added, is the funding going to be retroactive to January 1st, 2024, or is it going to be effective, let's say, the day that we execute the contract or May 30th, 2024? Because that's a big difference about how we use the funding and the planning.
Yeah, it's a good question, Begonia. We haven't figured out all those pieces yet. Some of it's going to depend on how we have to define these allowable uses in the grant agreement and where there's duplication that we can build off of and where it would be a narrower definition. I think one of the challenges we have on the timeline front is knowing that we have to develop our agency request budgets by, September. But the activities you all start, we wouldn't necessarily expect to happen before September. So there is going to be a mismatch a bit in the data we know you all will be able to lift up for us and when these reports are due. And I think that's something we'll have to continue to work together on in telling the story. So it's a great question, Begonia. And I think those are the pieces we have to iron out once we get these dollars approved.
So that's the other piece that I want to underscore around the approval process. So it's still not a done deal. Like the legislature still has to decide that they're going to approve the plan and release the funds. So one flag that I want to make to all of you, and we're still running down whether the Joint Ways and Means Education Subcommittee, which meets next week, and they kind of make decisions on this kind of thing, whether they will be accepting public testimony. And so if they are, then it may be helpful for them to hear from some of you all about the importance of birth through 5 and the urgency of meeting the need and like the brain science. And if they don't allow public testimony, then perhaps some context to some of the Ways and Means Education Subcommittee leadership could be helpful. So I'll find out some of those details and be in touch on if there's some help that you want to provide, how that could happen.
We have a comment in the chat. The info we got from ODE on the community grants just says the term of the grant is this biennium.
And ODE tends to only limit their grant agreements to the biennium. So it isn't necessarily an indicator that the funding isn't ongoing. They just generally don't let grant agreements cover more than one biennium. And Charlotte, yes, I will get these slides. I'll figure out what weirdness is happening with the fonts so that you all can actually read them. But I will make sure Maria has that to share.
Molly, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna, thanks, Maria. I was just gonna say that oftentimes with this kind of one-time money, we end up, buying lots and lots of books. And which is not a bad thing in and of itself, but can read really badly to legislators. Like, so what? So I think it will be a good conversation amongst us as hub leaders about how do we do that kind of one-time spending of these funds and shape it with larger system impacts, whether we tell that story in a series of individual locations or we just tell it as an overall strategy. But that's my worry about one-time funding.
It's a great point, Molly. And I think I'll work with Maria and Carla so that we can figure out how we can leverage this table to kind of work through, we've got some proposed metrics in the report, but how do we strike that balance? Because I agree, ideally we'd see an increase in, professional learning activities, that could make a strong case for ongoing funding, but also get to that long-term benefit and recognize that in some cases it's going to be purchasing books and getting those out the door. So I'll work with Maria and Carla on how we can co-create that to the extent possible and finding that flexibility depending on how each hub determines to use the dollars in response to community need.
We have a comment, 100% agree, Molly. A coordinated approach across hubs is important. And then Jillian, again, I agree, coordinated approach across hubs.
And one thing, this might be a nuance, and I don't even know if it's worth saying, but it's Tuesday after a holiday, and I really took last week off. So I'm like, saying things. As I remember the conversations, having the funds go and flow through KPI, for me personally, I think it's the right thing to do because we're connected to this work, and a lot of our KPI work is focused on literacy or aspects of literacy, but it also too is the funding vehicle by which we could get the dollars out really quickly legislatively. And I think, having very clear, not only coordination, but let's think about the long-term impact of these funds so that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot. Back to what I was saying, and Molly was just saying too, so it doesn't, just because we're using the KPI vehicle doesn't mean that it has to be just expanded what we're already doing with KPI. It can be it needs to be very targeted and discrete early literacy activities, and that's just how we're getting the dollars. So I don't think it was probably worth me taking time to say that, but I just want to put it out there that we need to be able to demonstrate to the legislators what we're able to accomplish with these funds.
I like that thinking, Lisa, and my wondering, Alyssa, is whether this group, the hub directors, are an opportunity to get early input on that Big P plan, because if we can get your thoughts on long-term vision early, then it can both shape that longer term trajectory sooner, and then also to help you coordinate across hubs to say, okay, if we're working on this as the long game, then what are the best uses of resources in this short, awkward year to get us to that longer term plan? So late January, early, February kind of conversations, if that's possible, Alyssa.
Yeah, I think our plan had been to start with the hubs. You all have some of the closest connections with the community, and you do so much of this work already. So how do we create a space for you to lift up your parent councils and the voices that you're already hearing from? So that is how we plan to do the work. I think what we're working on now is the overarching engagement plan and what are the inputs that we then also take back out to community. So this could maybe be both an input and an output, so we can think through that. And I think to your point, Lisa, we definitely want to be able to say, and I think there's two pieces that are helpful for the legislature to understand. I think KPI has really flown under the radar, and if anything, it's been noticed as a place for cuts, right? So that tells us that the legislature doesn't understand what KPI is buying and the benefit it's bringing to community. So I think the more you all can do that storytelling, the better, and demonstrate how this already is an early literacy infrastructure, and then be able to point to how these additional dollars, to your points, Molly and Lisa, take it one step further. Here's what we've been able to do because of these dollars and why we need the ongoing investment. Thanks, Pooja.
I know we're at time, so I want to be mindful for everybody, but if you think of other questions, I'm happy to gather them and get them to Alyssa and Pooja for us to answer via email or anything like that. Molly, our partners in KPI, etc., are also Equity Fund partners. Could we do a collaborative work on early literacy as a state? And is there a vision for Equity Fund early literacy capacity in the long term?
Yeah, I think I think the collaborative work as a state is something we're hoping to surface through the 2024 plan that Pooja mentioned. And in terms of the long-term vision, I think, Brenda, one of the things we're trying to scope out, there were two things we wanted to accomplish. We didn't want these dollars to just be limited to current equity fund grantees because we've never been able to expand this program. And we know there was so much misunderstanding about what the program did. And we've heard from so many CBOs that they would have applied had they known. So we wanted this to be a way to get access to more folks. And we wanted to build off of the good work of Equity Fund. So I think there is a question we have to ask ourselves, which is, do we continue to have a birth through 5 literacy program that builds off of other components of other programs we already fund, or do we just distribute the dollars through existing infrastructure with different allowable uses? So I think that's something we'll have to work through over the next year and to inform our final recommendations.
We have a question in the chat. Can we get an overview of all the equity grants that are currently in play and what the funding is for?
The Early Childhood Equity Fund, Lisa, we could work on a high level overview. There's a lot of overlap in terms of the activities, but we could share that.
Perfect. So I think, can we also get an overview of the Seeding Justice grantees?
Begonia, we don't have any oversight of those dollars. So Seeding Justice would have to be the ones to share that. Children's Institute or Family Forward may be able to assist, but we actually don't know who the grantees are either.
Just a thought to look at the homelessness and early literacy. Perfect. Thank you, Jillian. Okay, with that, if additional questions do come up, feel free to email me and I can gather those for Alyssa and Pooja and get answers back to you all. I will be gathering all of the materials and sending a recap. And thank you everyone for joining us today, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.